I'm absolutely honored to be sitting in front of you today. I remember last year I was sitting where you guys are, and I was listening to the College of Education senior speaker, thinking, wow, that would be so cool if I could do that next year. Little did I know I would actually be doing it, so that's pretty cool. So thank you, faculty, for choosing me. I'm very, very honored. Before I begin, I'd like to preface that you can put me in front of a room full of kindergartners, and I'm totally fine. Put me in front of a room full of adults, it's a different story, so please bear with me. In my family, I have a few amazing preachers that I've grown up listening to, one being my grandpa, who is actually an NU alum, which is super cool. And he's no longer with us, but if he was, I know he'd be front row cheering me on, so I hope I make him proud. My other grandpa and my dad are also fantastic speakers, so I hope they make all three of them proud today. Since January, I have been doing student teaching in a kindergarten classroom, and if you don't know what student teaching is, it's basically my internship. For the last 2 years, I've been learning methods and theories of how to teach, and for the last few months, I've been implementing those with actual students, which is crazy. So at first, I was intimidated by kindergarten, and you might be thinking, why? All you teach them is 1 + 1. And yes, I do teach them 1 + 1 and 2 + 2. Remember that, but it's a it's a little simpler on the academic side. But the very fact that you know how to do school and be a student is thanks to your kindergarten teacher. So what I want you to do right now is close your eyes, think of your kindergarten teacher, and say thank you, because you would not be where you are without them. They are doing the Lord's work. Thank you. Kindergartners are not independent whatsoever, which is really frustrating at times. They're also gross. For example, and I'm sorry if this grosses you out, one time during story time, I was watching my students, and I started noticing some of them were digging for gold. So I started taking a nose-picking tally, and during one story, there was 8 students, which you might think is not a lot, but out of 20, come on, guys. That was not repeat offenders either. So they're also really loud and need help with every single problem, which is really frustrating. But they are very sweet, and they are caring, and say the most profound things sometimes that you never thought you'd hear out of a kindergartner's mouth. And they are hilarious. So before I get into the main portion, the good stuff of what I'm talking about today, I thought I would share a few of the cute and funny things I've overheard the last few months. This may be only funny to me because I think they're adorable, but I am gladly accepting pity laughs, so bear with me. So for the first one, I had a student who was working on a little assignment by a window, and the sun was shining in the classroom, and it was getting on his eyes, and they were watering a little bit, and he was trying to tell me how his eyes were burning, but he could not figure it out. So what he ended up saying was, "Miss Friend, my eyes feel spicy," and I was just, it was precious. The next one, thanks for the pity laughs, you guys are doing great. The next one comes from one of my students who is, let's just say, imaginative. That's the best way to put it. I was checking in with her one morning just to see how she was doing, and she looked at me and said, "Miss Friend, last night at my house, I felt something smart." And I was like, "Okay, so what did you feel?" And she was like, serious, 1 + 1 is 2. And I was like, absolutely, you got it, super cool. So now before the next story, we need a little bit of a vocab lesson. In kindergarten, when you're feeling just a lot, you ever have those moments where you're feeling a lot and it's just too much? We call those big feelings. So one day I was noticing that one of my big feelings frequent flyers, as I like to call her, she was on the verge of a meltdown. So I walked over and I was like, "Hey, are you having some big feelings today?" And she said, "Yes, people are upsetting me." And I was like, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry." And so I know, as a 22-year-old, I have big feelings when I'm tired. So I was like, "Are you tired today?" And she said, no, I'm tired of people upsetting me. I was like, homegirl, I felt that, man. It was great. The last one caught me so off guard. I was about to teach a lesson. I was walking up to the front of the classroom, and my imaginative friend that I told you about earlier, she ran up to me, and she was like, Miss Friend, do you know how rainbows are made? And I was like, no. And she was like, so, when a girl leprechaun and a boy leprechaun like each other a lot, and I was like, oh my goodness, where is this going? And she continued, when a girl leprechaun and a boy leprechaun like each other a lot, they kiss and a rainbow comes out. And I was thoroughly shocked for a very long time. Wow, she's imaginative, it's great. I also decided to ask them what advice they have for college students. The overall answer was, what is advice? So, after explaining what advice was, I have a little bit of advice from kindergarten with love. You could use a calculator to calculate stuff, just in case you didn't know. If you finish college, you could become a teacher. So learn more, study a lot, maybe have activity time. Solid. Get a laptop. If you don't know something's meaning, you can search on the laptop. Little does he know, that's how I made it through college. I think they should learn a lot in school and pay attention. I mean college, not school, because those are not the same thing. This last one, man. I think you should study a lot at home so you can get better at the stuff you do in college. And I was like, okay, at me next time, Rayhan. Some of them did not really understand the question of what advice they want to give. So I asked, college students, they have a lot of things to do. They're really, really stressed. What are some things that they can do for fun? So they said, well, you could go to after-school programs like Girl Scouts. Don't do that. You could do some coloring. Solid, we have some of those on campus. It's great. You could play with some Legos. How about play at recess? Or some basketball? And then just a lot of Fortnite dances that I'm not going to perform for you today. You're welcome. But these kids they've stolen my heart, and I've learned so much from them, and I'm really trying not to think about leaving them in a few weeks because it makes me really sad. So we're not going to talk about that. Don't ask me about it. Okay. Now I'm going to move away from the topic of kindergarten, and today I want to share with you something that I have struggled with for most of my life, but mainly I started noticing that it was a thing when I started at Northwest, and that being comparison. And I know I can't be the only person in this room to struggle with comparison. We live in a world where we are seeing the best of people's lives, of their relationships, of their days, and we are constantly scrolling through them. So it's easy to compare when that's our normal. But for me, comparison manifests itself in a few different ways, like little things for me. For instance, evenings tomorrow, and I don't have a date. And I asked myself, what do they have that I don't? And I said, well, they have a date, and I don't. But the main area that I found myself comparing was in academics. So I've never been a straight A student. I have had to work a little harder than others to get where I'm at, which is fine. But throughout elementary, middle, high school, it never bothered me. And I didn't really notice it was bothering me until I started my classes here. Once admitted into the College of Education, you are put into a group of people, and this group of people is your cohort. They become the people that you spend a majority of your time with. So for 2 years, we took the same classes, we had the same projects and assignments, we had the same stressors. We went from seeing each other know nothing about teaching to actually teaching real human beings, which is really cool and terrifying at the same time. We went to Costa Rica together. We got sick in Costa Rica together. And let me tell you, nothing bonds you more than getting sick with a group of people in a foreign country. We went through a lot together. And I can easily say that I have found lifelong friendships in this group of people. They are all fantastic teachers. which actually sparked a cycle of unhealthy comparison in me. Because we have every class together, we see each other teach a lot. We do this thing called peer teaching, when if you don't know what that is, it's exactly how it sounds. You're teaching your peers. But I remember several times being so proud of a lesson and walking into the class excited to present it, and then watching my classmates present it so eloquently and smooth, and it was amazing, and they looked like naturals and so comfortable in front of people that they could most likely teach their lesson plan on the spot to actual students. And I started seeing this, and I began to compare myself, thinking, I can't teach like that. I'm not good with my words. You can't ask me anything on the spot because I'll just jumble everything. And I began to think, I'm not good enough, they are better than me. I would lesson plan with my peers, seeing them think of these amazing complex lessons on the spot and create a lesson plan so quickly, whereas I am still scrolling through Pinterest 2 hours later trying to find an idea. They would take these extravagant lesson plans, put it on a sticky note with like 5 bullet points, and teach it successfully from that sticky note, whereas I had a full-on script. And then once again, I thought, I am not good enough. I'm not like them. They're better than me. There are also these state tests that you have to take before you get into the College of Education, and then once you're in the program, you have to take them before you start student teaching. And I started seeing my peers pass on the first try, whereas it took me 3 tries to pass both math tests on both different occasions. And once again, I thought, man, I'm not good enough. They are better than me. And this narrative of I'm not good enough started making me think, because I'm not good enough, I'm not going to be a good teacher. Because I jumble my words, I'm not going to be a good teacher. And because I search Pinterest for 2 hours for an idea for a lesson, I'm not going to be a good teacher. Because I can't teach from a sticky note, I'm not going to be a good teacher. Because I can't pass a test on the first try, I'm not going to be a good teacher. This narrative began playing over and over in my head. Doubt began to creep in, and I thought teaching was part of my calling, but then I began to question whether or not it was. In the moment, I could not see past the doubt. I could not hear past the narrative playing over and over in my head. And it was not until very recently, like 2 months ago, where I was able to see past it. I didn't see something very, very important. Every single person in my cohort is at one point or another going to be a teacher. We all have the same career. We're all going to be teachers. But what I was not able to see was the fact that we all have different callings. I know my calling has something to do with teaching, but I don't know everything. And I don't know everybody else's calling either. I don't know what they're put on this earth to do. Our career is the same, but our calling is different. I was so caught up in the fact that I was lacking in my career that my calling was lost. The constant comparison caused me to question my calling, and that was a lot of the same sound, so I'm going to say it one more time. The constant comparison caused me to question my calling. Comparing others to myself made me lose sight of my calling. It made me start questioning my calling, and I began to see my calling through the lens of someone else's. I lost sight of the fact that I had been made for a reason, with a calling that is specifically designed and designated for me. I have been made with specific gifts that help me in that calling. Romans 12:6-8 says, "In his grace, God has given us different gifts for doing certain things well. So if God has given you the ability to prophesy, speak out with as much faith as God has given you. If your gift is serving others, serve them well. If you are a teacher, teach well. If your gift is to encourage others, be encouraging. If it is giving, give generously. If God has given you the leadership ability, take the responsibility seriously. And if you have a gift for showing kindness, do it kindly." We all have different gifts. We all have different capabilities. We all have specifically designed callings. In the midst of comparison, we need to slow down and see the value in that. A creator designed you. A creator designed you with a plan and a purpose. I know I will be a good teacher, not because I can pass a test on the first try, not because I can teach from a sticky note, not because I can eloquently stand in front of a room full of people and deliver a lesson or a message, not because it takes me 2.5 seconds to create a lesson plan, those are not my gifts. My specific gifts feed into my specific calling. I will be a good teacher. I will be a good teacher because every day my students can count on walking into my classroom with a fresh start. I will be a good teacher because my students will be able to feel safe in my classroom because sometimes school is the only place they feel that. I will be a good teacher because my students will receive the same love, grace, and mercy that I receive every day. Do they deserve it? No. Do I? Absolutely not. I was asked how my faith will play a role in my career, and that is my answer. In my career, I'm not going to be able to talk much about my faith, but I will show Jesus to my students through my actions. We live in a really sad, dark world, and I want to be that source of light for my students. Ephesians 4, 1-4 says, "Therefore, I, a prisoner for serving the Lord, beg you to lead a life worthy of your calling. For you have been called by God. Always be humble and gentle. Be patient with each other, making allowances for each other's faults because of your love. Make every effort to keep yourselves united in the Spirit, binding yourselves together with peace. For there is one body and one Spirit, just as you've been called to one glorious hope for the future." I know I will be a good teacher because I plan on leading a life worthy of my calling. I want to encourage you. College is a time to grow and establish yourself personally and professionally. For most of us, we are being trained for our calling. I hope that in the craziness of college, you are able to slow down and remember that your calling is specific to you. Your gifts are specific to you. Let that be motivation in itself. Someone this week said to me, "I know we are all on different paths and we all have different plans for our lives, but it's hard to just not compare." And I wholeheartedly agree. But I would urge you to get in the habit of reminding yourself of who you are, what you're doing, and who created you. Whether that is working hard to change your thought pattern like I do, or having a friend remind you when you're in the thick of it. Find what works best for you and do that. And I realized I talked really fast, but to end today, I wanted to do something that my RA from last year, Taylor Murray, used to do to end life group. She would stand up on top of a table and speak a blessing over everyone there. And those moments and words were so profound for me, and so today I wanted to do the same. This is my hope for you. May you believe with all your heart that God is writing a great story with your life. May the lies that came your way today fall by the wayside and make their way into your heart. May you instead know and believe the truth about who you are and whose you are. You are loved, accepted, gifted, and treasured. You have important things to do in this life. May you refuse to let anything distract you from God's highest purpose for you. He'll make a way where there seems to be no way. He'll move mountains at just the right time. You can trust him, so trust him and sleep well tonight. And because I talk so fast, now we're going to do this technique that we do in the College of Ed called a turn and talk. I want you to find a friend and talk about something an area of life where you find that you are comparing yourself. And what are some practical ways that you can stop comparing yourself and remember your gifts and your calling and who you are. And after that, you will be dismissed. Thank you.